And there he is, YouTubers. The lovely, the talented Sam Amick back in Elk Grove. He survived another year of Las Vegas. Sam, I don't know how you did it. I'm still here, but you survived it. You made it.
I'm still here too, brother. Soulfully speaking. You're still in Vegas?
I'm still in Vegas. I arrived late, and then I feel like everybody's left. It's just me and Sean Cunningham still here.
Yeah, it's funny. When I was there, I guess 2 days ago, it was one day more than I planned on going, and it felt like like school was out, and other than your friendly face, Jay, there were not nearly as many media members. It is wild how quickly first 4 or 5 days, once the big name guys stop playing, not as much attention. But hang in there.
Well, we're glad you're here with us. I know you just posted. We talked about it going to break. How obviously Sam Amick from The Athletic does great work there. You get a lot of intel. There's a lot of people here, and you got some more info on some stories that are just simmering out there that we want more meat on. That we're all kind of waiting. So let's kind of go in order, Sam, and let's start with Damian Lillard. That's a superstar that's for the first time become vocal, wanting to go to a specific spot in Miami. It's obviously hasn't been as easy as, hey, trade from Portland to Miami. We're all happy. That's not happened yet. Portland's been outspoken on taking their time. So what have you learned on the very latest with Dame and his future with the Blazers?
Yeah, granted, I showed my age with the the lead to the story, but I wrote about how
I like your rock references.
Well, okay, here's the context. We're in Vegas, and it kept cracking me up that all these old school musical acts find their renaissance in Sin City. So Usher's out there with a show, and Garth Brooks has got a show. Britney Spears is in the headlines with.
Is that U2 doing the Sphere? Like they're the first act there, right?
Yeah. No, you're right, Jade. Like the Sphere is going to be debuting with U2. So naturally, I think the song of the summer for the NBA and maybe the next Vegas act should be Guns N' Roses' Patience because it's going to take a lot of patience this summer for Damian Lillard and James Harden. But I'm always a sucker, you guys know, for like the beyond the transactional part of it, the human part of it. So like right now, Damian and James Harden, who both have similar situations, are choosing to be pretty quiet behind the scenes. Their stances have not changed. There's certainly, I think, some level of frustration. But that calendar moves quickly. And as we get closer to camp, I'm very interested to see how they handle their voices, and how they handle their influence.
Sam Amick joining us this morning. Sam, let's start with James Harden. First of all, came out, I want to say about a week ago. He's at the Michael Rubin White party, and you see all these wonderful pics he's posting with Joel and Tobias Harris, and it seems like, oh, kumbaya, James Harden might be coming back to the Sixers, but it doesn't sound like that's still a super real possibility.
No, I mean, his stance has not changed. The party definitely raised, kind of people's eyebrows, if you will. It's funny, though. The one guy you didn't see him partying with was Daryl Morey, and I don't think that's going to happen.
Is Daryl Morey invited?
Yeah, I mean, probably not. It's, I don't know. I was actually, jokes aside, I was upset that I wasn't invited. I was with the Players Union people that morning, and one of them even said, oh, we have our big Fanatics party tonight. And I was kind of waiting for that. Oh, we should come by, Sam. And that never came. So, who knows? I could have been there to see it firsthand.
Did you have a white outfit available? Sorry to cut you off. Did you have a full white fit ready to go?
I mean, white undershirt, probably. I had in the luggage.
Stain.
like the straight from, the white trash. Was that the party?
Wow.
Different party, Sam.
You're right. I wasn't probably prepared. But the Michael Rubin socializing was interesting because a quick backstory there, you guys know some of, I'm sure, is like when James Harden went to Philly, he's very close with Michael Rubin, and Michael, of course, has since sold his ownership stake in the Sixers, but he's still around the Sixers a lot. And like James, one of his, Michael being there, Michael recruiting him, was a pretty big factor in James going there in the first place. Now they obviously are on okay terms, but no, to your question, his stance has not changed, and we'll see what happens there. He's of course trying to get to the Clippers.
What's the, I think we're looking at different return rates for Dame and James Harden. What kind of net return we think we're talking about for a guy like James Harden?
I don't have a great sense. I mean, yes, I mean the two major differences is age and contract. And so James, is coming in a little. Actually, make sure I don't get that wrong. What is our age discrepancy there?
I think James is 34. Is he going to be 35 this
All
next
right.
season?
Yeah, I don't know why I second guess myself. James is older, and he's got he's got the dog years, if you will, of kind of the way that he's rolled in the past, as opposed to Damian, who's pretty kind of a Kobe-esque get there at 5 a.m. type guy. But the contract is a big deal. James opted into that $35 million option and will be a free agent next summer. So if you trade for him, you don't have the kind of security that you might have with Damian's contract, where he's got, multiple years left and a ton of money. The return, though, I don't know what to think in this climate, guys, because, the Bradley Beal deal, of course, set the bar extremely low with the no trade clause that he had. And that contrasts pretty greatly to, if you go back to last summer, the Rudy Gobert trade with Utah and Minnesota. Joe Cronin, within all that, the Blazers GM, I know we're bouncing from star player to star player, but
Mm-hmm.
Joe appears pretty determined to get a really nice haul. And I feel like right now he's probably setting the bar too high. So I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if you want to talk more specifics about hangups. I mean, the Heat on the Lillard front, they really seem pretty focused on not losing any significant role players. And it's because it's funny, during the California Classic, of course, in Sacramento, I got some feedback from the Heat side that, the idea that they had to wait just meant that they were losing out on a bunch of, minimum salary free agents who probably would have fit in nicely. So if they somehow had been able to get those guys, to replace a Caleb Martin or a Nikola Jovic, players like that, then maybe those guys would be in the deal. But they can't, play the waiting game and then ultimately give up key role players as well. That appears to be a pretty big problem.
Sam Amick joining us from the Folsom Lake Honda Hotline. Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop. Sam, another hang-up supposedly seems like Dame doesn't want to go anywhere but Miami. His agent's kind of putting it out there that anyone else who trades for him is getting a disgruntled star. I kind of push back on the idea that if Dame landed in a spot that was going to be competitive, and when I mean competitive, a potential title team, it just doesn't seem like it's in Dame's makeup to go out there and pout.
I understand the question, Jay, and I don't know the answer. And again, it's why it's going to get so much more interesting. The way it was put to me is, and again, I don't know if I fully believe it, was that, and this is from, admittedly his side, is don't lose sight of the fact that whether Damian is repping for Oakland or repping for Portland in the good times, or creating a rap career that's been wildly successful, or becoming a family man, that he is a person of conviction. And that, kind of framing of it was in reference to the idea that if he was in fact sent to a team that he did not want to play for, that conviction should concern the team that was getting him. Now, do I fully believe that Dame is going to sit out and go the Ben Simmons route to an extent, if you will? I have a hard time seeing it. I think that, he has been waiting so long to finally kind of play this card of asking out of Portland. He does seem, really focused on getting exactly where he wants to go. And, if you want that, then you have to scare off every other suitor. You just do. I'm in the minority, though, and I've written a little bit of this, where do I think there's a 5% chance that, specifically star players from other teams that are good teams could maybe sway him? I do think that's possible. I don't know exactly what's happening on that front right now. I heard some stuff early on, like intriguing, phone calls that he took where he was flattered with the attention that he got from really, really good players. So that stuff, could eventually come into play. But it's not a no trade clause, but the idea of having a contract that, maxes out at a $63 million salary down the line, you would hate to take that on and then also have a guy who doesn't want to be there.
Sam, one thing you had mentioned in your piece in the Athletic, again, published about 15-20 minutes ago. Check it out. Go to theathletic.com, find out Sam's very latest. And it's kind of tales from Vegas, things on Lillard, things on Harden, things on Chris Paul and the Warriors. We'll get into that in a minute. But I wanted to go back to one of the things you first told us, that kind of where we are now, the next step is what we hear from their voices, and whether we hear it publicly or their camps, and that meaning Harden and that meaning Lillard. You documented kind of where, when it got messy in Houston with Harden, it got very messy, and Harden made it very clear that he wanted out. What do you think the next step is for those two camps? And I'm speaking specifically of Harden and Lillard, because as you said earlier, the GMs are talking patience. The players want to be moved. What do you think their next voices will be said, or their next moves are from those individuals?
On the James side, I'm trying to think of the timing in my head. Little baby might have a birthday coming up that James can, go celebrate in Atlanta or Vegas. Last time, perhaps, although a little different. That was back in COVID times when the optics were even worse. Again, we have the playbook, Jay, that you mentioned with James. We've seen that he will, he'll play games in which he doesn't compete at a very high level. Remember that infamous game with Brooklyn that he played in Sacramento? Sacramento, by the way, that's had a weird recent history, and star players like sandbagging it right before they get traded. Jimmy Butler was another one during his Minnesota days. I think we know where this might be going with James, but beyond, I think the public posturing is, again, that's something that I looked into for this story. And if those players were ready to jump on the phone and openly talk about why they disagreed with the teams they were trying to part ways with, part of our job is, like, if they wanted to get that out there, of course we would listen. That's not the case right now. They are both choosing to be quiet. On the Dame side, and you guys kind of hit on it a moment ago, there has been some reporting about how behind the scenes, his agent Aaron Goodwin is making his voice be heard, and I think there's a sense of, like, okay, if people are now complaining that we're being too vocal, it's fine. We're going to lay back and we're going to see where this goes. But that inevitably will change, I think, as we get closer to October.
And more on the Dame front, Sam, just kind of your read on it, because like you said, it's really hard to get kind of an accurate read when, one side of the camp is just being quiet. In your opinion, why only Miami? Because it feels like if Dame wants out of Portland, it's because he wants to be in a situation where he's playing for a team that's much more competitive. There's several options out there, and probably, not a ton, but probably better options out there than Miami for that would be willing to trade for him, it seems like.
My best educated guess to that is a couple things. From one, I just life speaking, or just beyond basketball, I don't get the sense that he is the biggest East Coast guy. In Miami, I think, has got its own lane. He's from Oakland, played his college ball at Weber State, and then obviously headed off to Portland. I think that is a factor when it comes to just family and where he would like to be. Because, you look at Philly. I mean, I think it would be fun to watch, Joel Embiid ball out with Damian Lillard. You look at Boston. Now, that one's trickier because I think to get Dame to Boston, it's really tough to do that without losing Jaylen Brown along the way. But if you had all three of those guys, that could be, fantastic. But I think it's partly off-court life stuff, just his opinion of those cities and how they would fit with him and his family. But the Miami thing, he's very tight with Bam Adebayo, a very good friend of his. And I think as far as the culture and the types of competitors they have, that he sees that as a good fit. I would also say, and again, to be clear, this is, I guess, informed speculation. When you spend a lot of your career with an organization where ultimately you made a choice not to trust the ownership in the front office anymore, the Miami Heat are on that short list of teams where, kind of come hell or high water, Pat Riley is going to find a way to function in a healthy manner with the roster and to continually make you competitive, and the trust level could be high, even if you don't have experience with Pat in the past. His track record. So I think all of those things appeal to Dame. Also, if you widen the net and you say 3-4 teams, you lessen control, and that's just the reality of it. And I think he's trying very hard to control this situation as much as he can.
Sam, just on your basketball knowledge, if James Harden, jumping back to him, lands on the Clippers, I'm assuming they're going to want to keep Paul George and Kawhi Leonard in that, combination. If that trio is together, we've seen other great, setups. Clippers are already a threat every year anyway. They've kind of fallen short, but just your thoughts on if Harden is there with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, how dangerous is that team?
I mean, it's interesting. I think eventually we were going to segue to the Warriors and Chris Paul, and this is a lesser version of that, or I'm sorry, a better version of that. It's an insurance policy type of thing, right? Like it's a Kawhi Leonard, Paul George. They both miss so much time that the idea of having James Harden there, as a guy who can run the team and go Houston Rockets style, James Harden, if you need him to at times, that would be the type of insurance policy, the type of luxury that they need. I'm sure you guys caught the clip the other day that did crack me up of Jerry West jumping on Paul George's podcast and just like bluntly saying to Paul himself that the idea that he and Kawhi play half the games is ridiculous. Shout out to like being older and just not giving I can't wait to get there. That'll be fun.
The man's a wolf. He eats dogs, Sam.
Yes, exactly. But that would be a good mix. And the Clippers, of course, with Steve Ballmer, are not only cutting massive checks to have a team that has not lived up to expectations, but they have a new arena coming. And it feels like they want something a little sexier to debut the new arena with beyond the duo that has been so disappointing because of health reasons.
Sam, you mentioned the Warriors. You mentioned Chris Paul. And again, Sam joining us from the Folsom Lake Honda Hotline. Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop. We talk about insurance policy. Is that really more or less probably the biggest factor of what Golden State looks at Chris Paul as, is more of an insurance policy as a guy instead that's going to come in and, be the captain of that second rotation, so to speak?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know. Maybe I was admittedly tying in the State Farm comment in there. Maybe Chris will be mad at me for referring to him as an insurance policy, because I do think it's not a matter of just break glass if needed. Chris is going to make an impact, and I think what we saw with his media session in Vegas, which I was in the room for, it definitely cracked me up. Like the Bay Area media have dealt with a wild cast of characters during this Warriors era, Draymond Green chief among them. But it was fun to see some of my friends and colleagues kind of get their first taste of Chris Paul's personality. Kendra Andrews of ESPN, who does a great job, had asked him, of course, about coming off the bench. And he looks at her with that really, he's trying to hide the fact that he's completely sarcastic and a little cutting, and says, you coaching? You the coach now? And that's Chris, and it brought me back to the fact, and I wrote about this, I've talked to him about when he went to Oklahoma City, Sam Presti and all the Thunder officials, they had this really super fancy PowerPoint presentation, all this data, all this research they had done to paint a picture for him as to why he should load manage. But more importantly, and this relates to the Warrior stuff, they had a vision for how to use him with the Thunder that he did not agree with. And I do think there's probably some of that happening right now with the Warriors. Just because he's a couple years older doesn't mean he's any less stubborn. And so Chris sounded to me like a guy who wants to start. So they got to navigate through that. I do think over the totality of a game, rotation wise, there's plenty of ways to start him, but then have it be kind of a trophy start and then pivot toward him leading the second unit. I think they do want that. And it's funny, when they got him, there was so much focus on the playing style difference between he and Jordan Poole. And all of a sudden, Chris Paul being Mr. Pick and Roll, the Warriors are all about movement. My understanding is they actually wanted that optionality. They wanted that diversify, look at the offense. And that's what they're looking for. We'll see how many minutes he plays. We'll see how many games he plays. But, Chris is going to be hurt just because he got traded a couple times over the past couple of years. He's not going to turn into a shrinking violet.
The guy is a Hall of Fame point guard that started every single game of his career. Every single game he's ever played. I have a hard time finding him coming off the bench, Sam. I just do.
Yeah, the Warrior fans will probably gripe about it a bit, at least until they see how it looks. And I talked to our, esteemed Warriors writer Anthony Slater about this. That's just a really small lineup. If he's not obviously bumping Steph or Clay out of the starting lineup, so you're going Steph Curry, Chris Paul, Klay Thompson, Andrew Wiggins, Draymond Green. I mean, that's your lineup. It's, I mean, who knows? Maybe it becomes kind of, the death lineup, kind of updated, and we'll see how it looks. But I'm with you. I mean, he's started every game. He's also, by the way, I know he fell off a bit last year, had some health stuff, but everybody keeps forgetting, like, led the league in assists 2 years ago and had really good moments last year. So I'm curious to see where his game is at. But yeah, he's a legend for sure.
Sam, again, I want to plug that you have all this up on a piece right now at The Athletic. Just check it out. It's a really good, your summer league notes, your Vegas notes. Another note you had in there was about expansion, which seems like expansion talk seems to be heating up as we near the next television deal for the NBA. It seems like Vegas and Seattle are kind of earmarked for the 31 and 32 next franchises in the NBA. I guess I more wonder, is the NBA doing this because they feel like this is best for the game to expand into these two markets? Or is it really so, hey, we still got a lot of governors that need to recover from the pandemic, and this is the easiest way to do it?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting theory. I have a hard time reconciling the idea of any of these governors having to recover. And I understand the spirit of what you're saying, but I just cannot get over the business component of the NBA. And I think we talked about this a little bit last week. The idea that the salary cap has doubled since 2015, the type of money moving through these franchises is just mind blowing. And so, it feels to me like Adam Silver, who one of his major calling cards as he took over for David Stern was that, David was one of the originators, one of the founders, and one of the innovators. Adam was the builder, was the businessman, the guy who came from a different space than David Stern did. And, say what you will about some of the missteps with Adam along the way, he has built the business in a pretty incredible way. And, you look at Vegas this week, and he referred to Summer League as the NBA's 31st franchise. You've got the G League Showcase in the winter that is a big success. You got the in-season tournament coming to Vegas. It's going to be another moneymaker. The point is, in terms of expansion, they're finding ways to print money. And those two particular markets, they're going to come with a kind of rising tide that lifts all ships financially, if and when that happens. I'm going to say when now. I mean, it seems like it's definitely happening. But then you've got long history in both of those markets where basketball-wise, they have a real vested interest in being there. The Vegas thing that I got into a little bit, you guys, I mean, you remember 2007 All-Star game, that place was like unofficially scratched off the list. Like, oh boy, that was a disaster. And now everything's different. Now I hate the fact that the A's are going there because I'm from the Bay, things like that. But, the pro sports landscape in Vegas is way different. I alluded to this in the column. I went to an Aces game during Summer League. I don't know if you guys have ever been to one, but I'm looking around going, man, like sellout, like super intense, like engaged crowd. So that was always the question in Vegas is what kind of mood or what kind of fan are you going to get? So they have that data now. And then Seattle, of course, kind of had its team ripped from it before with Oklahoma City taking them. Part of me is kind of excited a couple years down the road, maybe be back in those two cities.
Yeah, and I don't know if you got the vibe of this, Sam, when you were here, whether it's, Uber drivers, cab drivers, whoever you might be, people here, the locals. Again, not universal, nothing is, but I felt like they love the Aces. They love the Golden Knights. Yeah, Raiders, cool. A's, not so much. Like, they love what's been deemed theirs. So if they got an expansion team that's theirs, not a team that moved in, I think they'd be all in. They seem to be gravitating towards the stuff that's kind of been deemed their own.
Yeah, no doubt. Although, correct me if I'm wrong, and I looked this up yesterday, the Aces were the San Antonio franchise before, right? Is that correct?
Oh, I believe so. Yes. Okay. No, that is right.
Yeah. So that's one that moves. I mean, so maybe a little hope for one that moves. But to your point, I mean, it just in general, listen, I mean, it's crazy, man. I know, Jay, you mentioned the Sphere before, like that, just the spectacle that is Las Vegas, all the years I've been going there. This trip actually felt pretty fresh in terms of like everything from the Sphere to the sports landscape differences to even the like kind of the scope of Summer League itself. We were doing this back when you would walk into the gym in 2005 and and you'd have your pick of the 72 people up in the stands from the NBA to talk to, but there might have been 72 people from the NBA, and there were 35 from the community as far as fans. There was nobody out there. You didn't want to talk too loud because people would hear what you were saying. Now, in terms of fan interest, and this relates back to the expansion question, those first couple of games for Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson, Brandon Miller, that like they felt very much like I was already going to an NBA game, not a summer league game. The crowds were unbelievable. We had a hilarious video at our place. My guy Andrew Schlecht is the producer of my pod and one of our athletic people. So Andrew, I think the idea actually came from David Aldridge, where he went over to the other gym during the Wembanyama debut and interviewed people as to like, why the hell are you not watching Wembanyama? and it was, part of it was like they were basically kind of boxed out. There was no more room.
Yeah.
And so the overflow was on the other side. So the vibe is different. It's not the concern with Vegas in particular was always that the fans, that everybody was transient, you know what I mean? And that wouldn't create a good environment. It seems like they're kind of answering that question.
Yeah, it's amazing what we've been able to see here, what we continue to see, and how the NBA just is a 12-month deal. It's just awesome. Sam, keep up the great work. We always look forward to talking to you. Glad you're back home, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Sam.
All right, thank you. That is Sam Amick. Again, go to The Athletic to find his latest piece, the stuff we just talked about. It's all there in full detail. You get to check it out. We always appreciate insight from Sam. We will get more insight from here in Vegas at 9 o'clock.